Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. It's like 7 o'clock-ish or so Central. I don't know what time it is where you are, but welcome to the Hang Up. I'm Matt Dillahunty. What am I hung up on this week? Well, I've been doing this a long time, and we've already got callers lined up, and I've got a guest, and we want to just jump right into it and get to it here in a second. But I'm starting to wonder if it's possible for theists to present any sort of reasonable defense of their beliefs at all. And I don't just mean in a philosophical sense. I don't just mean in the sense of, I'm getting ready to do a couple of debates. I've got a debate coming up tomorrow night on the Modern Day Debates channel against Stuart Connectley. We were supposed to do it last week, but he got sick. So thankfully, and hopefully he's feeling much better, and we'll have a debate tomorrow. And then like on February 7th, I'm doing another debate on Does God Exist in an online forum. That's not even what I'm talking about. Those sorts of debates where you're going to have a subject and a discussion, and hopefully you've defined your terms, and you're trying to create some sort of empirically justified, epistemically warranted case for a God or whatever it is that you're debating or believing. That's not what I'm talking about either. I'm talking about in the real world, day to day, when you run into somebody and you start talking to them about religion. The overwhelming majority of them don't know what it is even that they believe. They don't even know how to put a label on it. They don't know how to justify it. For most people, their experience with religion is not academic. It's experiential. It is communal. It is, hey, we're all here together, and on the Sabbath day, I go and I dress up in my better than normal clothes, and I go hang out with a group of people who I think believe the same as I do, and we sing and we praise, and it feels good, and then we give away some money that we hope goes to help somebody, and then we go back to our daily lives the next day. This is the process. This is what religion is to individuals. In some cases, it goes far beyond this. In some cases, it crosses over into cult-like behavior. And in some cases, it is just straight out cultish, where we're going to segregate you from everybody. You're not going to be able to contact your family more, etc. But I grew up primarily Southern Baptist. Occasionally, I would get to go to a Pentecostal church, probably for a concert I've mentioned before. But a part of my family was Catholic. And what I learned about Catholicism was that there are a bunch of Mary-worshipping idolaters who aren't real Christians. And then it didn't help that when you met a Catholic, they would often identify that they're not Christian in the sense that we're Christian, because they want to distinguish themselves from Protestants. But when you look at some of the terrible behavior that goes on from the clergy, on behalf of the church, from the deacons, from the elders in the churches, things of sex shaming, like controlling behavior. Yes, you can get to exorcisms, but you can also get to the weird stuff of speaking in tongues and snake handling them, things that people don't see every day in their church, and so it's a little bit weird. But for the people who are in those things, for the people who are deep in those, there's nothing that could possibly be more affirming and more evidence-based than for a snake-handling preacher to stand up there with a big old rattlesnake at the front of the church and dance around with it and not get bit. Now, they do end up getting bit, and they're not really treating their snakes well. And one of the things, as somebody who knows quite a bit about snakes, is that often you'll get dry bites, but also if you got a snake that hasn't been fed, it's not going to waste its venom trying to bite the person that's handling it. It's going to save that venom for a meal. I've gone over before the cruelty of all of this, and how a snake that should live for 10 or 15 years is somehow needing to be replaced every year or two, because they don't take care of them at all. And I'm bothered by that, but not just because I breed snakes. I didn't bring that up. When you look at the weird behavior that somehow becomes normal to people, what justification could there be? When you ask somebody, hey, why do you believe? And you get someone who's in one of the more extreme, more cult-like practices, what can they say? Hey, you listen to someone like Ray Comfort, who's trying to, I guess, be a little bit evidence-based or trying to make arguments that appeal to regular people. But Ray flatly said, "Hey, he knows that he knows that he knows that he knows." It would be easier to prove to him that his wife doesn't exist than to reach the conclusion that there is no God. That his experience with God is so much more and stronger and better than his experience with his wife, that's all you could hope to prove or disprove. And meanwhile, it's not even a falsifiable proposition. And so I do debates. I'm going to be doing more debates. We have callers lined up. By the way, if you're a theist, you're going to get to the head of the queue. But today I brought in Nikki, who, among other things, runs the Beat the Cult podcast. And we met years ago, but I did not remember. And she just nicely reminded me about it now. How are you, Nikki? How you doing?
I'm good, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I noticed, when I was perusing your channel, you were responding to a TikTok video on an exorcism, and that's what partially prompted this, because that's not something that was a part of my growing up. Was it a part of yours at all, or is this something you were introduced to afterwards?
Unfortunately, it was a part of mine, but from a Protestant standpoint, my parents are charismatic evangelical Christians, as my mother would quantify it. And she and my father believed that there were demons in our house when I was growing up in Knoxville. And they swore that the demons were putting welts on my brother's legs, that the demons were trying to have my sister jump out of a window, that they were stealing things, putting profanity on the walls, lifting up golf clubs in the back of the van, calling the phone when the phone was unplugged, and all of these things. And they thought that the best way to handle this was to have pastors come over and read the Bible and basically scream at the walls and cast the demons out of the home. So that's what they did. And I had to sit there and read the Bible in tandem with them. And there were other times when, unfortunately, my sister was blamed for these things, and she was being spanked, really, it was very traumatizing. But I would have to sit in the hallway and read Psalms 119 while she was just being spanked, and she was screaming in the background. And it was a really horrible time. And they thought the best way to handle that was to exorcise the demons from the home by calling over pastors to do it.
Now, I know that you were on Neil's 604 Atheist thing, a podcast telling your story and everything else. So you give us a summarized version, and then I'll direct people over to Neil's thing. Here you are, someone who was raised in a Protestant home that believed things so strongly that they performed some version of an exorcism on your house. How on earth did you become a skeptic and find your way out of that?
My mom asked me the same thing, because she says that she would read verses to me and sing hymns to me in the womb, and they dedicated me to Christ right after being born. Yeah, they really did. I went to a Christian preschool, a Christian private school, was in public school for 2 to 3 years until they said that was making me into more of an unruly teen, which I was just really a normal teen. And then they homeschooled me. And my father and my mother are very, very, very religious, absolutely to a fault. They're extremely conservative, very homophobic, very transphobic. They would say that they're not, but they are. That's why I actually had to kind of cut off my mom and my dad and my sisters, unfortunately. But I've been much happier since doing that. But despite the constant inculcation of religious beliefs, my dad challenged me to be a critical thinker. And he would do so by asking us various questions kind of throughout the day as he would see fit. For example, I always use this story as we would be on a road trip. And, when you're driving down the interstate and you see the sign, bridge freezes before the rest of the road, please be safe, or whatever, when it's icy. And he would ask me, or ask us in the car, why does that sign say that? What geologically is taking place or meteorologically taking place that would motivate them to put that sign on the side of the road? So he would ask us questions like that. If he would kill a spider in the house or something, he would take the spider, put it on a piece of paper, put it on my mom's table. She'd be screaming at him, and he would point out different parts of the spider and just educate us in those ways. But then simultaneously, there was a massive aspect of compartmentalization when it came to religious belief. There was no room for critical thought. And I remember asking my dad, I'm like, you are actually a pretty intelligent person. How are you not able to see this critically? And he was just like, well, I trust Jesus, and that's pretty much, that's the summary. But I never really, it never made sense to me. It just has never made sense to me. I would see people raising their hands in church. It's weird.
It's one of those things where there were parts of it that never made sense to me. But when I would ask, so I thought I was a bad teenager, a bad kid, mainly because I was raised to be so good that every little thing that I did, was like the end of the world. Then I hear what some other people did, and I run across people who just say and do things, and I'm like, well, how do you function in society with a brain that leads you to do stuff like that? So I was not all that bad. I broke the rules on occasion. But how bad can you be when you're in church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night? Oh, maybe not Tuesday night. Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then some Friday and Saturday mission trip stuff. I mean, there's not much time left.
You were definitely more involved. We played sports, so our Tuesdays and Thursdays and Mondays were practice, and Fridays and Saturdays were games. But
sports were the weekend.
Yeah, right. Well, I played on like 4 basketball teams at one time, so I was always busy. Yeah, I thought I was going to be a WNBA player, then I realized I don't make money. But I was doing that. But we did have Sundays, we went to church, and then Wednesdays we would have like small prayer group prayer group meetings at people's homes, and that's pretty much the extent of the church participation. However, my parents are extremely, extremely religious, and every single thing that they do, they say centers around Jesus Christ, and they are not playing when they say it. My mother's Bible, I remember the pages falling out of it, and just ink, just all different colors of ink, and just notes in the margins all over the place. And I don't know if she still has that Bible, but every lesson that we got, everything we did, it was wrong because the Bible said it, wrong because Jesus said it, wrong. I mean, religion is such a major part of my family. My uncle is actually a megachurch pastor here in Atlanta, and he is actually, ironically, the more accepting person regarding my homosexuality, my atheism. He's actually the one who's loving, and my parents are the ones who are rejecting me. And it's very interesting that that's the case. But my family on both sides are extremely religious. There's no escaping it. As far as I know, I'm the only atheist. How I got out, I have no idea. At all.
I wonder if your megachurch pastor uncle can afford to be more loving, more caring, because he's more secure in his position. I find that the people who are the pastors in the church, everybody's always looking up to them all the time and going to them for advice, and they're going to try and set the standard. And so it's a lot easier for them you're no threat to them. You're a threat to your parents. You're not a threat to the megachurch pastor.
It's so interesting because I would think I'm more of a threat to my parents, I'm sorry, that's what you said. I'm sorry. Less of a threat to them because they are so ingrained and inflexible. But that's an interesting point. I've never thought of that before. But I don't know how I got out. That's such a great question, especially being an African-American woman and us being the most religious demographic in the United States. It is mind-blowing to me. I don't know.
I want to make sure we got like 6 full lines. I got a present this week, which made me laugh. Seth Andrews sent me something.
Oh, Seth.
And I promised him that later this week I will be using it in a video, but it's a Holy Spirit board where you can communicate directly with Jesus Christ. It's a little basically like a Ouija board with a little cross planchette that you can move around. When I was a kid, these things scared the hell out of me and made me, my parents were convinced that, they were really speaking with demons and stuff like that. And so I was always afraid to touch one of those when I was a kid. But now they've got one where you can speak directly to Jesus. Did you run across Ouija boards and things like that? I mean, if you had gone to a sleepover at a friend's house and they pulled out a Ouija board, would it have been terrifying or curiosity?
That wouldn't have
Or
happened
boring?
because all my friends were from the church.
Yeah.
And the only time I was allowed to hang out with anyone who really wasn't from the church or someone my parents approved of was when I was with my basketball team in junior high and we watched American Pie. And I ran home and told my parents that we were all sinners and they went and complained. So we didn't really see a lot of Ouija boards. We were not even permitted to celebrate Halloween because of
Wow.
the demonic connotations that my mother and my father interpreted, but we weren't allowed to do any of that. So there were no Ouija boards in my life. However, that is funny. And if I was still talking to my parents, I would probably get them that as a joke, but they probably wouldn't accept it.
Yeah. I tell you what, hopefully we get some more questions here in a little while, but we got a lot of callers lined up. I want to make sure we get to them. Just as a reminder, you're watching The Hang Up and you're here on the line, and I'm here with Nikki from Beat the Cult. I don't know for sure about Nikki, but I know for sure about me. What I'd really love is for theists to call in and say, yes, I can in fact defend what I believe and here's how. Or for theists to call in and say, we're never going to be able to defend it, not in the way that other people do and we believe for whatever reasons. All I want's just an honest conversation. And when people, it'd be so helpful if you'd like answer the question or say, I don't know, or whatever else. Those are the callers. That's the call that always goes well. But
Agreed.
we have.
No, I agree with you.
Did we get? Here we go. We got Chris in Idaho. Pronouns are he, him. Welcome, Chris. You're a non-denominational theist, and welcome to the Hang Up. How can we help?
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, man. How are you? How are you guys?
Doing all right.
Good. Okay, so I don't really have I guess it is a question, but it's kind of starting from a different approach here. It's more of like, if Matt, you were to presume that there is a God, would you lean toward the God being good or evil? And what would convince you of that? So I guess it's me asking you more, when I'm calling in, I'm asking you the question. So I'm just saying to start with.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'd love to get Nikki's thoughts on this. My answer is that, being as charitable as possible, it sounds like what you're asking me is, Matt, if you were to assume that some God exists, some version of the God of classical theism that created everything and, is the one God, would it be good or evil? And my answer is, I wouldn't presume that it would be good or evil, that it would be some mix of it, just like anyone and everything else. Because a truly good God, I don't understand how they could ever create a creation that was a mix of good and evil. How on earth they could allow their, certainly that we are far from perfection there. But it could be, it could be an evil God. That would, I guess, more likely than a purely good one. But I don't tend to view things in terms of someone is pure good or pure evil. It's what they do can be evaluated as good or evil. And what we do, all of us do things that are both. And so why would God be any different?
Right. Well, did Nikki, did you want to jump in on that?
Yes.
On your thoughts on that?
That is an interesting question. I'm assuming that you're asking it because you believe that there is a God and you believe that that God is supremely good.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Okay. In that case, I would have to challenge that, because if we're going based on the God of the Bible and how that God is described and how you and I would define good or bad, because that is relative, but I do believe that you would also say that slavery is bad, and that invading a town and taking all of the virgin girls for sex slaves is bad. I would say that God is not quantified as good. I'm sure there is some justification and maybe some cognitive dissonance that would probably motivate you to justify that as good, but it's not. With that being said, I don't if that God were to exist, I wouldn't quantify that God as good. If that answers your question.
Okay.
Or qualify that God as
Okay.
good.
Yeah. Well. Okay. So I had called in before, Matt, and talked about like derivatives, and it was coming more from like a moral angle on it. But I've kind of been thinking about it, and I guess this does kind of touch on morality, but you know, there's good and bad. So there's two. You know, you get the good, you get the bad, but there would have to be a standard for each.
You take them both, and then you have the facts of life.
Well, yeah. I'm saying like one is like the essence of. So if you were to look at it as the devil, his essence is completely like the purest evil, and that's kind of what we're experiencing. And then there's also the essence of God, which is, you know, goodness, and then we experience that as well.
What do you mean we're experiencing the purest evil?
Well, no. I'm saying we don't experience that. I'm saying, but I mean, if you look around the world, there's injustice, and there's a lot of negative things that happen, and
but you're saying
these are derivatives of the devil.
If you don't mind, Chris, can I interject?
But he's yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I just want to interject it and just maybe clarify. Are you basically saying that the evil that is represented in the world, or the evil that you see, is caused by the devil, as the devil is the representation of evil in the Christian belief? Is that what you're saying?
No, I would say that he's. Oh, hold on one second here. Sorry. I would say that he's. We have. Let's see here. Trying to think of how I can word this. Yeah, I would say that he's like there's good and bad, and the yin yang. You know, all of it's kind of in. I mean, we can see that there's distinguished the two, right? And
it depends.
I'm just saying he would be like the devil. The devil would be the purest form of evil, and we experience it not to the degree that it actually is. If that makes sense.
Except I don't have any reason.
Like a percentage of it. Go ahead.
Okay, but I don't have any reason to believe that there is a devil, or that anything could be the purest evil, or that the things that I experience that I want to label as evil or bad are a portion of something greater.
Well, you don't think that that's a strong. Go ahead.
I'm trying. If we could come up with an example, what do you think is something that's evil that we experience that you think comes from a devil or the devil?
What I think. Well, I mean, I don't think it's hard. I mean, just, you know, obviously going to the 10 Commandments, murder. I mean,
but the God of the Bible commits. But the God of the Bible definitely commits more murder than the devil. So, how do you clarify that, or what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, you'd have to. Okay, we might.
I mean, is killing babies evil? Is killing babies evil?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So,
I mean,
so the God of the Bible,
agree that killing and torturing babies for your own pleasure.
Hang on. You already said yes. The God of the Bible killed a bunch of babies when he drowned everyone except for Noah and his family. Isn't that evil?
And the babies of Egypt too.
Oh, I was getting to that. I was waiting for this answer.
Yeah.
Would I say that is evil? Okay, so you're saying he ordered?
No, the God of the Bible, the God of the Bible supposedly drowned every living thing except for Noah, Noah's wife, his 3 sons and their wives, and whatever else he stuffed on the boat, which means that however many other people were alive, they all died, including all the babies, including pregnant people with babies. How is that not evil?
Right. And okay, well, I mean, natural disasters and he was the one that
this was directly caused by the God. Yeah. The God caused the flood. It wasn't just a natural disaster.
There isn't, nor could there
Okay.
ever be, a natural disaster where the entirety of the earth was flooded. The story is absurd at its face, but the story is that God intentionally flooded the earth to take out everyone intentionally except for Noah and his family. Why isn't that evil?
Well, I think, coming at it from the Christian perspective would be, we don't know exactly the depravity that was,
Okay,
when it's killing a baby.
Chris, stop.
Bottom line is,
Chris,
it's wrong. It's wrong.
Stop.
We
Chris,
both agree it's wrong.
Stop. Chris, stop. Because we've gotten to the answer that I wanted to get to, which allows me to bring up Egypt. The same God, as one of the plagues, killed the firstborn infant male child of anyone who didn't splatter blood on their door. How is that not evil? What had those babies ever done to possibly deserve that? If God is trying to punish the Egyptians, how does killing their babies result in anything other than a declaration of evil from any of us?
Yeah, it's a good point. I can't really. I would say, coming from the Christian perspective, is what we view of death might be, alternate to how God views it. I guess that would be,
So you're saying that you are
killing
actually
it,
probably
because
more moral. So you're more moral than actually the God you believe in, because you just said it was wrong, but the God went ahead and did this anyway. And despite any type of justification or mental gymnastics that you can do to justify that, you also agree it's wrong.
Yeah, I would say that to kill is wrong. Yes.
Right.
But see, that's what I don't like. He says don't murder, and you're pointing out something that that took place where
Actually,
babies
the
died
first commandment says thou shalt
at
not
his
kill.
order.
Murder is a different label
Okay.
that requires some sort of legal construct, but one of the translations is thou shalt not kill. You can say it as thou shalt not murder, but the issue here is that, you called in to say, hey, if there were a God, would you imagine this God is fully good or fully evil? And my answer was, I wouldn't imagine he's fully either one. And so are you okay with a God that does some evil shit from time to time, but does, wants some good stuff the rest of the time?
I think I would be scared of that because you don't. He isn't like the ultimate pure goodness that the Bible is portraying, right? So
I don't think the Bible portrays. Yeah.
What was that?
By the way,
that, Chris?
I don't see that the Bible necessarily portrays that. The character of the Bible. Here's the thing. Name something that the God of the Bible did that is undeniably good.
Well, I would say later in the, obviously the New Testament, and this is kind of subjective too on how people view it, but I would say Christ's sacrifice.
Okay. I asked for something. I asked for something that was undeniably good, and your response is that it's subjective, but Christ's sacrifice. Why is coming down and taking human form and sacrificing yourself to yourself in a bloody ritual to make a loophole for rules that you're responsible for? What's good about that?
Well, I think you're kind of minimizing.
I think you're kind of avoiding
that. Well, no. I'm saying you're minimizing love. I think
what's good about it?
Because I think that's
love.
Love.
I think it's love. Yes.
Really?
It's an act
love.
It's an act of love to
could God
redeem,
just forgive us? Could God just forgive us without going through a bloody murder?
He could.
Then wouldn't that be more loving? Wouldn't that be the more loving solution, to just forgive everybody?
Or just not putting us in the position originally, or not, or just. I want to just follow up with what Matt says.
Well, no.
In order to,
okay.
well, I just
hang on.
Just the situation that we were put into originally by the, Adam and Eve in the garden, and God putting this insurmountable evil in front of them and then punishing them for it when he knew that they were going to do it anyway and that they couldn't do otherwise, but then making them responsible for it and then punishing their offspring. and then gaslighting humans and making us feel guilty for what he did, and then gaslighting us even further by sending down somebody who's human and causing us to beat him to death, and then putting that on our shoulders and just causing all of that guilt. You call that love? That's what you quantify or qualify as love?
Well, see, I kind of wanted to go to what Matt was saying. Like, he beat himself, and why didn't he just forgive us? I see, now I think you're downplaying sin.
Downplaying sin.
And
Chris,
wrongdoing.
Sin is a
Chris, hang on.
Go ahead.
Hang on, everybody. Chris, do you have a turn signal on? Are you in your car?
I'm in a truck. I'm a truck driver, so.
Oh.
Are you driving right
I'm going
now?
through a way station. I'm driving, but I have a headset on, so yeah.
Well, I don't want people who are driving, but Nikki asked a particular question, and you decided to ignore it. Come back to my question, but ignore my actual question and just suggest that I'm downplaying sin. What you're engaging in now is whataboutism. Instead of actually addressing the question of what is good or what is love or whether or not what God does qualifies as love, you want to keep deflecting back to sin. Who is ultimately responsible for sin, Chris?
Well, okay. So she
Who
touched on
is
free will.
ultimately responsible for sin, Chris?
Okay. Who is ultimately okay? Well, I think that I know you're trying to, put it on that God is basically the one. See, so that's going back to maybe God is not as good as we think he is.
Maybe he's not as you think he is. My only issue isn't whether or not God is good or evil. It's whether or not God exists in the first place. Everything we've discussed from the second you started this phone call has been pointless, useless, window dressing speculation about the fantasy story that you are believing. I only care whether or not it's true. If there's a good God and he exists, I'd like to know it. If there's an evil God and he exists, I'd like to know it. The rest of it is fucking fan fiction, and it's a waste of mine and everybody else's time. Can you demonstrate that the God you believe in exists?
Okay, so at the beginning of the show, you said you were talking about this, and I would say that I would not be able to prove it to you.
Cool.
I can't prove it to you.
Then the next,
did you prove it to
next question.
that was. Yeah. I mean, that wasn't really.
Nikki just asked the next question,
though.
So listen to it.
Go ahead. Okay.
How did you prove it to yourself?
How did I prove it to myself? I observe the world around me, and I look at, I felt like things started getting more aggressive, Matt, when I started referring to Jesus. Okay, and
I'm sorry. What are you talking about? Are you, hang on, Chris.
Yeah.
Nikki just asked you how you convinced yourself, and it seems that what you did in response to that was mumble and then suggest that I got more hostile or more aggravated when you mentioned Jesus. Is that what you're trying to do right now?
Look.
Is that what you're trying to do right now?
Hey, don't raise your voice at me, dog. Okay?
I will fucking raise my voice at you whenever I want, you lying piece of shit who just accused me of stuff that didn't happen.
Hey, dog.
You've been deflecting.
Hey,
no. Now your ass is muted.
No.
No, I don't have to listen. You're muted, bitch. Listen. I listened to you, and I played your little game, and I did your little tap dance. And you want to accuse me of doing something that I did not do. Nikki and I have sat here and patiently hand-walked your ass down to realizations that are uncomfortable. And I'm genuinely sorry that you are so uncomfortable right now that instead of actually answering the question that Nikki asked or answering the question that I asked, you decided to turn this around and be like, well, I noticed things started getting rather hostile as soon as I mentioned Jesus. Are you an idiot? I was a Christian for more than 30 years. I have no fear or anger or anything else with regard to somebody mentioning Jesus. What I have frustration with is someone like you who calls in, and when asked questions that lead towards conclusions, you twist and turn and dance, and then you start accusing. You start making accusations because all you're looking for is some sort of validation. Oh, look, I said this word and the atheist got upset. That must have really been Jesus sticking the knife in. No, it was you being a deflecting prick. Now, I'm going to put you off hold and give you a chance to answer Nikki's question, which was, how did you convince yourself? You are off mute.
Okay. All right. So how did I convince myself? So what I was saying before is I basically, I observe the world, morality, good and evil, and and it is subjective. It's personal experience. And I know, Matt, you're going to say, how is that any way to prove anything? And it's not, so I guess we're kind of at that point where, I can't prove it to you. And I did say that to you, Matt. I told you that.
But I'm going to stop talking in just a second, because Nikki's about to light this place up. That's not an answer to Nikki's question, to say you observed, you saw good and evil, and it's all about personal experience, and you're admitting that you won't prove it to us. It would be helpful if you would say, what was the personal experience that convinced you that there was this particular God? Because that was Nikki's question. And you just offered kind of a vague little thing and went back to how you couldn't prove it to us. I get that you can't prove it to us. Could you explain what this personal experience was so that Nikki can get an answer to her question?
Okay. Well, I was just trying to do it briefly because I know there's other callers on the line, and
I don't need a preamble. I need the experience. Stop wasting our time and answer her question.
Okay. I'm gonna forfeit. I'm just gonna, because I don't want to go into it any further. You've already gotten extremely aggressive with me. I don't want to talk anymore. So, okay, Matt?
Chris, it doesn't matter how aggressive Matt gets, because Jesus, if Jesus exists and he's on your side and he can counter any aggression that Matt or anyone throws at you, it shouldn't matter. People got to stop backing down. This happened to me before.
This is the thing, is all you were asking was a straight simple question. Okay, we get it. You can't prove it to us. Why are you convinced?
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't prove to anybody that my partner isn't cheating on me. I can't prove that. But you can say, hey, Matt, why are you convinced of that? And then I can start describing how our time is spent together, what goes on here, what sort of things happen, how we communicate, why there's a strong level of trust, those sorts of things. Yeah. All of those things get to, this is why I'm convinced. And you might become convinced too, because, nobody here is saying that your personal experience is irrelevant. It's probably not enough to justify my belief in the supernatural, but it's not irrelevant. But no.
I just don't understand why people keep backing down. You have the God, supposedly the creator of the universe, on your side. You should be able to walk into any conflict with the utmost confidence. There should be no fear. There should be no forfeiting. There should be none of that. It continues.
Well, we've got other people. We got other people who are waiting patiently, including Quint in Utah, who's another non-denominational theist who wants to talk about why he believes in God. So welcome, Quint. You're on the hang up. You're on the line.
Hi, Quint.
Oh, okay. So my biggest thing is that everything exists instead of does not exist. I have a hard time with that aspect.
What does that have to do with a God?
Hang on for 1 second. You just said everything exists instead of does not exist. But that's not true, because there are plenty of things that do not exist. So the things that exist, and the things that don't exist, don't exist. Why is that a problem?
Because why does anything exist?
Aha.
at all. Like, what's the point of everything existing?
Go for it. Nikki's got good thoughts and questions on this. I just wanted to clear up that was kind of a weird tautology there, because the things that exist and the things that don't. And I don't see why that's a problem. But no, your real issue here is, why does anything exist at all?
Right.
What if we don't have an answer to that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What if we don't have an answer to that?
So, yeah, let me explain my background a little bit. I was raised LDS. I, about 7 years ago, decided I didn't believe anymore. So I went atheist agnostic, kind of didn't believe there was any sort of God. Recently, like, it was portrayed to me like, well, why are we here at all? Why are things here aside from not here? In other words, life either has purpose or doesn't have purpose, and it's up to you to decide if it has purpose or not.
I agree with that,
And
but I still don't understand what God has to do with that.
So I come at this at more of a, there is a level at which someone is controlling that this is a learning experience for us.
Okay, so
And
can
I guess
explain how that results in the, well, if you don't mind just kind of getting to how that warrants your God belief?
Well, if there is someone who is over what we are experiencing, kind of someone who is organizing our experience, I would consider that our God.
So you are your God then?
Me as the God?
Well, you're saying if there's someone who's organizing your experience and that you would consider that God. You're the person organizing your experience.
See, and I would question if I was in fact the one organizing the experience, because it would become the idea of, are we just a brain, not a brain, are we in a simulation? And if we are in fact in a simulation, then everything we are experiencing is ourselves. And I just think that would be absurd to believe.
Well, that's one particular idea of what this could be, but that's just one of many. How does the experience that you're having, the life that you have, how does that point to a God, and specifically the Christian God?
Well, see, and I wouldn't even point it towards a Christian God. Because I wouldn't say I'm specifically Christian. I would just say I believe that there is a higher power who is directing the experiences we all have together.
Why?
Okay. Well, why do you believe that?
Because, well, see, that's the hard part, is because I'm a little conflicted, because I didn't believe for the longest time that there was a God, and then I was portrayed with this. I was put up with this idea that there's either a purpose or there's not, and to think that there's no purpose to existence at all was a bit hard for me to come to terms with.
Okay, would you agree that just because you don't like something, or you don't prefer something, or you don't understand something, that doesn't tell you anything at all about what the truth is?
Correct. I would agree with that, but it's I would almost see it as like a 50-50 kind of roll the dice. Either we have purpose or we don't, and it's hard to come to terms with not having purpose. Do you see what I'm saying?
But see, my life absolutely has purpose, it has whatever purpose I give to it. You seem to only be considering some sort of externally imposed purpose. And would you want to live in a world where the government decided what job you're going to have right when you're born and told you that was just, you're going to do this?
Well, that's kind of how I feel, is that my life has been dictated for me, and to not have something more than what I'm told to do it's just random chance.
So Quint, but what I was asking is, given the choice, would you prefer to live in a world where your parents or the government dictate what your career and job and all of the decisions in your life are going to be, or would you prefer a world where you get to decide that?
I mean, I would absolutely prefer a world that I get to choose whatever I want to do. I would love that.
Cool.
That'd be great.
So when we're looking at purpose in the world, we know that you can give your life whatever purpose and meaning you want. You can give it that direction. So why is that not enough when the very thing that you seem to be lamenting, or you seem to be upset that there isn't a broader purpose, when that broader externally imposed purpose is something you would reject?
So the purpose would be what? Without more to life, without a purpose to existing, what would be that purpose? Whatever I want to give it, just like moving on to the next promotion, what would that look like?
What would be wrong with that? What do you want out of life? I want to learn things. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. I want to learn new things and share what I've learned. I want to keep and breed reptiles. I want to debate religious belief and stuff like that. Those are the things I want to do. And damn it, I made my life that.
So if my life is nothing but suffering, I shouldn't look at that as something as me growing as a person, learning because of what has been given to me. This is a learning experience, because I feel like if whatever I'm learning now and however I'm growing now, if I'm just suffering the whole way through, what's the point if I just at the end die and have horrible life?
So
sounds like there's some other things going on, Clint.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend reaching out to the Secular Therapy Project. I'm not saying this at all to be mean, Quint. I'm empathizing entirely, but it's difficult because I don't understand when somebody tells me that their whole life is suffering. I understand that there are people who suffer a great deal more than others, and that perhaps some people, the entirety of their life is suffering. I can't grasp that. And I don't know if it's because even when bad things are happening, I find something positive in there that I can learn. I don't find it immediately. I still, cry and rage against the dying of the light and all that other stuff over and over again. But what it sounds like, the questions that you're asking and the thing that you're struggling with, and I can hear it in your voice. This all has nothing to do with whether or not there's a God or whether or not, there's good reason to be a God. You seem to be having a deep existential crisis, in a psychological sense, that you are tying to religion because you don't have any other framework to tie it to. And I would highly recommend that you contact Recovering from Religion and someone from the Secular Therapy Project who has more experience and understanding with this stuff than I do. I'm assuming Nikki has other thoughts as well, but I don't know that there's anything I can say that would be helpful to you today, Quint, other than to seek out that help.
Yeah, Quint, to
Okay.
me, what I'm hearing, and I could be wrong, but I'm hearing some pain, and I can identify with that. Life, not to be cliche, but when you're dealing with, and I'm not a therapist or anything like that, but I've dealt with depression. And when I've dealt with depression, everything seems very bleak, even when things are okay. And there have been times when I've not wanted to get out of the day that in which I was currently, living, and I wanted to, not be there. So, and during those times, things look very bleak. If you're feeling those things, and I would definitely follow Matt's suggestion. Um, if you're not able to necessarily afford a therapist, look at your state's options, and they may be able to help you get some care in that way. But once you, kind of attack that first, maybe the God question will, maybe you should put that on the back burner. That would be my suggestion, just until maybe you can sort out those feelings you're having.
Yeah, because if there is a God, that God doesn't seem to be doing anything to help you with the crisis that you're currently feeling, and and doesn't seem to be stepping in to offer any sort of guidance or direction. So it would be much better to focus on that crisis itself and get some help. And then once you figure out who you are, where you're at, and how to get over this existential hump, then you can figure out, is there a God? And then if there is, you can say, hey, where were you when I needed you? Why did I have to, why
Right.
did this have to be so difficult? Um,
Well,
well, go ahead.
what's weird about that is that I've basically been put in this position where I'm like, if this is for a purpose, then everything that's happened to me, it was put into play as is, and God would have put this in knowing what would have happened. Like, this is his game plan for teaching us what we need to know. And it makes it really difficult, especially because my family is extremely religious. My wife is very religious, and I just feel like this is just kind of what I need to go through to learn about everything.
I'll say this. Let's imagine. So first of all, either there is a God or there isn't. If there isn't, then there's no reason for you to think about things as if God is trying to forcibly teach you a message by putting difficulties in your path. If there is a God, then either that God is intentionally putting difficult things in your path to teach you a lesson, or it's not. And if God isn't doing that, then you are now basically accusing that God of doing something that it's not doing. And this is, since it's not true in that scenario, you are never going to deal with the actual obstacles that are in place correctly because you're assuming that they're from a God. So only under the scenario that there is a God who is trying to teach you something and who is intentionally putting these things in your path to teach you the lesson, only in that very narrow scenario is your concern valid. Under every other scenario, a God that exists that isn't doing all this, maybe a God that's competing, a good God, and Satan, maybe Satan's putting stuff in your path. There's so many different scenarios that fit this, and you have no way of finding out which one is true. And that's why Nikki and I were saying, put the God thing on the back burner, get yourself some help, because if you get yourself some help from a secular perspective, and it does good, it can't possibly hurt the God. The God will still be there, ready for you to discover. And it's that God's job to explain to you what it is, who it is, what it wants, and what it's doing or not doing in your life. And if you're asking a God and getting no answers, the most reasonable, best tentative solution or conclusion is to conclude that either that God doesn't exist, or it doesn't want you to know it exists, or it doesn't want to talk to you. In any case, every second you spend worrying about that God is a second that you weren't actually focused on the problem at hand. And how could any God who loves you want you to waste your time spinning your wheels on something that cannot solve the problem because you have a flawed understanding of what the problem is? And so that God isn't worth your time.
I agree.
Okay.
But take care of yourself, please. I know your family's very religious, and they're going to definitely give you suggestions that are religiously based. My mother, up until recently, thought that depression was just a lack of Jesus in one's life, and that definitely isn't encouraging. But despite the existence of a God or not, depression and anxiety is a neurological issue. So perhaps speaking to someone who can maybe help you approach this from that standpoint would enable you to maybe even answer the God question a little more easily for yourself. But it sounds like you're dealing with some rough stuff, and I would just encourage you to reach out to someone if you're able to do that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time.
Sure.
I'll let you guys move on to someone else, and I'll look into what you guys have suggested.
Definitely would hit up
I don't know.
Psychotherapy Project.
Yeah, and if you're on Twitter, you can reach out to me. I'm on Beat the Cult, at Beat the Cult on Twitter, and depending on your state, I can help send some resources your way if that would help.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not on Twitter, but
or Instagram, or even if YouTube, you can jump in my comments if you want. I'll keep an eye out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll post something, but thank you.
Yeah,
thanks a lot, Glenn. And if you feel free to reach out again, touch base, let us know if you if you found something that was productive that you may want to share to help other people as well.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely would look into the Psychotherapy Project and Recovering from Religion as a great start to reaching out on these issues. And no matter what the truth is, no matter whether there's a God or not, no matter what the purpose of your life is, whether it's yours to decide or whether somebody's externally imposing it, none of the things that have happened to you that were beyond your control, if they were beyond your control, you've got to realize that wasn't you doing that to you, and that probably wasn't a God doing that to you. Is what, the very notion that a God would sit there and like fling poo at you and not make it clear that this is what was happening. I think that you, like many people, have just managed to have more suffering than we would expect on average in your life.
Sure.
And it feels frustrating, and you would love to find what's the reason for this? Why did this happen? And why has it happened to me? And so that sort of seeking the intentional stance, that's what we humans do. There must be a pattern here. There must be a reason. Right. And the truth is, sometimes there's not. Sometimes people do bad things and get rewarded. And sometimes people do good things and get punished.
Yeah. I mean, we're problem solving and pattern seeking animals. So it makes sense that you would want to sort out why things are occurring so you could try to change them. But I know this is another cliche, but for me, realizing that it was, within the bounds of reality, but for me, realizing that it was up to me to change my life if I wanted to see change, that it's you against you. It's like my favorite saying, it's you against you, because it is. That was very empowering. It's a lot of pressure, but I would so much rather depend on myself for results than depend on others. Not that you can't work with others to get results, but ultimately it is you against you. So I don't know if that helps at all. Probably not as much right now, but
it's definitely hard to believe that you're being punished for no reason at all, and to more look towards that there is a learning experience in your suffering, that
Yeah, I would agree with
this
that.
is happening to you.
Sure, and that's fine. Like, right, I would definitely take away the agency and the suspicion of agency in the things that are taking place in your life. Things happen, shit happens, life happens, and there are a lot of times that we can't really see the pattern and why things are going wrong. But I would agree that when things go wrong, it is a way for you to step back and maybe do an evaluation of yourself. And if there are people in your life causing you stress, do you need them there? If it's your job, do you need to be there? If it's your kids, do you need to send them to boarding school? I'm joking, don't do that. I'm just saying, like, whatever's going on in your life, whatever's going on in your life, step back and see what you can control, and see where your power lies, and then exercise that power, because you have power.
Yep. Thanks, Quint.
Thank
I
you.
hope things improve for you.
Thanks, Quint.
Thank you. You guys have been a big help.
Of course.
Glad
Thank
to
you.
hear that. I hope there's more help coming. Give yourself a hug if you can't get somebody else to give you one right away. Wow. It's just it's one of those situations where I can't even say, oh, look, here's what religion does to somebody. I don't think this is what religion does to somebody. I think this is what, as human beings, as pattern seeking, machines, we've all been lied to. I watched the opening episode. Sorry to everybody who respected me. I watched the opening episode of The Bachelor last night. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching it to really admire how awful people can be. But the one thing I keep hearing over and over is, I want to meet my person. I want to meet my person. I want to meet my person. We as a society have lied to people with this notion that they have a person, that they have a soulmate, that there's, one person for everybody. And maybe for some people, there might be one person and they spend their whole life with it, and that's great. But the notion that this is a one size fits all for everybody is silly. And so we've got people on game shows now chasing the elusive soulmate. And it just occurred to me that this is what he was doing. This is what many of us do with, there has to be a reason. There must be some purpose there, but he's been lied to, and not just by religion. It's just culturally. In addition to keeping up with the Joneses and everything else, we sell fictions that we are bad at recognizing.
Yeah.
Well, I have a caller who's calling in specifically for you.
Yay.
So Juno from Virginia, pronouns are she, her, had a question for Nikki about a book. So welcome, Juno.
Hi, Juno.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of feedback, but it's all right.
Sorry about that. So my question was, I heard that you were having a book club discussion about the book, Is Marriage for White People? And so I wanted to ask a follow-up question on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, we actually just solidified our meeting on Sunday, so yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry, that was extra. Yeah.
I was wondering if the tendency for Black women to not want to marry out is something that you feel like you see for younger generations. I mean, I've heard about that as being an older woman kind of thing, but these days, people aren't even marrying the opposite gender, so it doesn't even seem like that would be much of a hang-up for younger people, but I kind of just wondered what you're seeing in that area.
I would definitely say it is more of a trend with older Black women. Personally, for me, my father told me I needed to marry a Black man. When I was dating men, I predominantly dated Black men. I was very lucky one thing that the book told me that I wasn't aware of is that 50% of Black men drop out of high school. And that's a painful fact for me. I don't know anyone who's dropped out of high school. School is a non-negotiable in my family, a bachelor's minimum. But I was very lucky in that was able to date a lot of Black men who still wanted to date Black women, but were able to attain a level of socioeconomic status that is rare for Black men. Because typically and statistically, when a Black man has at least a bachelor's or is making a certain amount of money, he does marry out. But I was able to find some Black men that, you know, my ex-fiance is, he's like an electrical engineer for the FAA. He's very successful. But I have to admit, I am a lesbian. I do date women, but through reading this book and some of the experiences I've had, kind of being the more masculine of center partner in my relationships, if I were to date men again, or if I won't, but if I did date men, I probably would be more versatile in my dating options and date more white men, just, you know, generally speaking. But I would agree that it does seem to be a trend amongst older generations, and I see more younger generations, Black women actually marrying out or dating outside of their race.
I feel like I see the same thing too. Personally, I never got any pressure from family about, you know, dating a certain race at all. Just they got to be a Christian.
Yeah, I was told that as well. But I used to say to my siblings, because my sisters are the same way, I did not think that finding a man in the church was a good idea, because I felt like he would be very antiquated in his ideas regarding male and female roles. But yeah, he definitely had to be a Christian, but my ex was actually an atheist as well. So I was very lucky to find another Black atheist in that case.
Yeah, that's really rare. I was going to say, like, it's kind of hard to find. I feel like it's hard to find men in the church because it's mostly filled with women.
Yeah, especially in the Black church. Black women are the most religious demographic in the United States. And another thing that contributes to also the high rates of divorce in the Black community is because of that statistic of 50% of Black men dropping out of high school. Black women are usually the ones who attain a higher level of education and make more. And I asked this question actually on my Twitter page. I ask a lot of controversial questions. And one of the questions was, do men feel insecure when the woman makes more money? Well, a lot of men would say that they don't, but statistically they do. And women were saying, I thought that men were more progressive, but when I made more money than my husband or my ex, they were very uncomfortable. In the Black church or the Black community, generally speaking, because 70% of Black kids are born to single parents, single moms who are not married to the father of their children, there is a large push for Black women to find Black men who are loyal and will marry them. So that comes with the expectation that he will also take care of her as well. And in other communities, it is more common for them to marry. For like white men are more likely, and other men of other races are more likely to marry the mother of their children. And that contributes to better socioeconomic opportunities for the child. So, you know, that's it's a tough thing, but when Black women do find a straight male who does have a higher amount of education, they try to snatch him, but he will not more than likely, but they do typically marry out. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's unfortunate. I just thank God that I'm a lesbian. So I have to put up with it. And I love Black women. So they're usually very single, and I want a big family, and they usually have kids. So I'm very happy to get married and adopt someone else's children and take care of them.
Oh, that's sweet. I hope that you get everything you want.
I do too. I would love a big family. But thank you so much. I hope I answered your question. I know I was rambling a bit there.
Oh, yeah, very thoroughly. I read that book, too, and I thought it was so thought-provoking. I actually forgot the part that you said of, like, 50% not graduating from high school. I don't know how, but I forgot that part. And now I can't remember. That has to be old stats, though. It can't be, like, millennial men. Can't be.
I hope so. I really do. I really do. I will have to look at when that book was written. It is relatively recent, I believe, within the last decade, which might put the research at probably the last 20 years. But I'm really hoping so. It was a shock for me because, like I said, we have to go to school. Like, there was no question. We all went to college. Like, there was no question at all. So my brothers have a minimum of a bachelor's, and my second to youngest brother is actually looking to go back for his master's and become a professor. So yeah, my dad had a master's. It's weird to me, but I was also very privileged. I grew up in a home with both parents, upper class family, in the suburbs. I'm very, very rare. So I was very lucky. But reading
book was written
really
in
opened my eyes. When was
that
it
book was
written?
written in 2012, so whatever data it had in it is at least that old. I would hope things have improved since, and I'm with you, Juno, but I don't know that they have. And actually part of me is kind of scared to look it up to find out. And how many times in the last 10 years have I thought, oh, certainly things have improved, only to find out they've gotten worse.
Right. It's
probably
very
all the
scary.
time.
Yes, I worry about my youngest brother. He is 23, and he is a straight black male who's this tall, big dude. And I always tell him, please stay out of trouble. And you know, I love him. My other brother is gay, and of course, he's 31, so he's less likely to get into trouble. But I do worry about my brother, and I worry about not really my sisters, but I just, I don't know if things have changed. I hope they probably have, but I, I try not to think about it. It's really tough, just kind of being a black woman and dealing with all the nonsense. But
sorry, there's a cat in my room who's decided to play with stuff. I thought I closed the door to keep the cat out, but evidently I didn't. So
Well,
anyway, thanks a lot for your question, Juno.
You gotta. Oh, thank you very much for answering. I hope you both have a good evening.
Thanks,
Thank you, Juno. Thanks for calling.
All right. We have a bunch of calls, but some of them I think are ones that I'm going to be able to handle fairly quickly because they want to take me to task for something. So, like, for example, awesome. Philippe in Brazil is calling to tell me that I'm wrong about debunking astrology. So,
hi, Philippe. That's awesome.
Hello.
From Brazil.
Is it Philippe or Felipe?
Felipe. It's kind of hard. You can call me whatever.
It's all right. How am I wrong?
Okay. So I guess that here in Brazil we have a different take on astrology, at least as how you and Jimmy usually talk about in the show. And the way you approach it doesn't seem that it would really debunk it. So the thing is, please correct me if I'm wrong. I heard you say that there is one word that debunks astrology, and that word is twins. Am I correct?
Correct.
So that's where I think you're wrong, because actually there's the way people present astrology here is a way that it gets unfalsifiable, because it says that actually what happens is that when we're born, the way the stars and the planets are aligned, they actually don't influence you. They don't make anything happen. They're just like a clock that shows what's happening at that time, and that people that are born in that time have some capability, like some tools in their toolbox, and what they're going to do with that tools, it's different from person to person. So there's a lot of Brazilian sites talking about Gisele Bündchen, for example, the supermodel, because she has a twin sister. And they say, oh, people think that this would debunk astrology, but no. If you see, they have, for example, some traces that make them be good to work with family, because her sister works with her. She's her entrepreneur. I forgot the correct word now, but she helps her career. And
I don't understand. Here's real simple.
Okay.
Within astrology, if you're going to make predictions for someone about their life using astrology, what do you use? Don't you use their birth date?
Yes.
don't twins share the same birth date?
Yes.
Is a prediction in astrology going to be true for both of those twins?
Since it's a prediction about like the probability of something happening, or
no, it's not a probability. No. Oh my gosh! Now you're just making excuses for them that it might happen and it might not. Well, cool. That means astrology is useless, which means it's debunked.
Yes.
So either way, either it's been debunked because it can't make predictions that are testable because two people born at the same time don't have the exact same life, which means it's not a useful predictor of anything in a person's life. Is it possible that there are two people born in exactly the same hospital in the same minute, and one of them dies 2 days later and the other one lives to be 100? Is that possible?
Yes. Yes.
Then astrology is bullshit and it's been debunked by people born at the same time.
That is kind of my point. I mean, they don't say that it's absolutely a fixed story that's going to happen to that person. It's like, these are your qualities. Oh, you're going to
can't.
Be
no. They can't. You can't do that because if somebody died 2 days later, they don't have those qualities.
I understand what you're saying, but my thing is to be completely straightforward here. I was really into astrology until a few months ago, almost the same time that I became an atheist, and I still have the same patterns or the same ways of thinking that I had before, and that a lot of people here uses. You know, here in Brazil, it's one of the first things that happened with my brother-in-law was when he discovered that his wife was pregnant. Was let's see what's his star sign. So it's really common. And it's really present in people's lives over here. But everyone says that it's more likely. Everybody has some die, and some people have dies that are going to roll more sixes, and other people are going to roll more ones. And this is the kind of thing that astrology tells. I agree with you.
This is post hoc rationalization. This is astrology is important and it can tell you about your life, except when it doesn't, or when it gets it wrong, or when it's just vague. The fact that you want to prop up a bunch of nonsense means that it's been debunked. And it's debunked by the fact that there are no two people born at the same time who will live the same life, period.
I understand that, but I feel that I'm not being very clear, perhaps, but or maybe not understanding your point, because since it would be like this is only the probability. This both.
No. You don't get to do the probability bullshit. How many people are born every minute? The answer is 267 people. There are 267 people born every single minute. Is there any trait that all 267 of those babies that were born in that minute, any trait that they're going to share that is in any way substantive, directly related to the stars? Are they all going to have any identical personality trait?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Now let's imagine the 267 babies that were. Let's imagine the 267 babies that were born in the last minute, and let's compare them to the 267 babies that were born on July 14th at 8:21 p.m. Those people were born at a completely different time of the year with completely different star signs. If we took the groups of those two people, the 267 born now and the 267 born then, and compared them, do you think there would be people in the first group that have more similarities with people in the second group than with people in their own group?
I am not so sure. I think that it wouldn't happen, but I don't see how we can disprove that.
I think you don't see how we can disprove it. So you don't think we can look at 267 people born in January and 267 people born in July and compare the characteristics of their life and see that a good chunk of them share the same characteristics even though they were born 6 months apart? You don't think we can do that?
Yes, I think that's why I said usually it's unfalsifiable, because they say, oh,
no, we can absolutely do that. We can we can absolutely do that. And astrology has been tested thoroughly, repeatedly, including by myself, Jimmy, and Owen. Astrology is garbage. It is debunked, and it's debunked by one word, twins, but it's also debunked by lots of other words and lots of other things as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that the best potential defense you can come up with is that it's really not specific. It's just kind of probabilistic. You know what else is kind of probabilistic? Rolling dice, guessing, throwing darts at a wall while blindfolded, all of which are just as demonstrably accurate as anything astrology's ever done.
But I understand that, and I agree, but how would you prove that it's false that all those 250 children that were born at the same time, they all have some better way to communicate than other people? If they choose to go and try to develop this characteristic, they would be good. Because that, I feel like that's like poisoning the well, in a sense that you can't prove them wrong. They're always going to say, "Oh no, this guy only doesn't talk well because he didn't train for it. He has everything he has."
Yes, that's called a post hoc rationalization. That's called a post hoc rationalization, and has nothing to do with the reliability of astrology. If all you're saying is that astrology will tell you what you could have been good at if you'd have studied, well, go fuck yourself with not you, but go fuck yourself with astrology, because all you're saying then is if you'd have trained at something, you'd have been good at it. But since you didn't train at it, you're not good at it. Well, prove that I would have been good at it. I have zero interest in unfalsifiable propositions. Astrology's been debunked many times over, and it can be debunked by the one word twins, because twins don't have the same life. And if the stars dictated what happens in people's lives, as astrology promotes, then they would, but they don't.
Right.
But I'm going to move on, Felipe.
Okay, thanks. Does Nikki have anything to add?
Astrology is bullshit.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Felipe.
The only reason I wasn't asking Nikki to add anything is because you called in to say I was wrong. So what's Nikki going to say? Matt wasn't wrong, or Matt was wrong? Let's start a fight.
Matt was wrong, or Matt was right. Excuse me. Matt's usually right. And that's why I have to actually give a disclaimer. I have to watch myself being on here with you, because when I listen to you, I end up laughing a lot because of the things you like, your tone. So like, I'm trying not to laugh because I'm not usually talking to you. I'm usually just listening to you. You say the same hilarious shit, and I'm just trying not to laugh.
I'm usually not even trying to be funny, but I'm glad that it promotes a laugh rather than ire. And I'm going to apologize in advance for this call. It's been a little while, but we have. He's now calling himself the unworthy Emmanuel.
Oh my
atheist.
God! Say, is it
pronouns are he, him, and evidently he watched a debate between me and William, and was correct about slaves obey your masters is a very moral instruction.
Again, Emmanuel.
So I'm so sorry in advance, but Emmanuel, welcome to the show. Please get directly to the point.
Quick disclaimer. Emmanuel called when I was on with Jimmy, and Jimmy told me that he had spoken to you before. And I, though not being religious, actually did say a prayer for him. So, Emmanuel, you've got some balls calling in to talk to Matt Dillahunty about slavery. And me again. By the way, how are you? Because we've been over this.
So what's the point? What's the point, Emmanuel?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my point is, so what I think is apparently the Old Testament has
its own flaws, and that was actually corrected in the New Testament. So I saw your debate with him regarding 1 Corinthians 7, where Bible says that you are bought by a price and don't be bond servants of man, in 1 Corinthians 7:23. And you kind of like focused basically in Ephesians 6:5 and Colossians 3:22, but the Bible actually promotes responding good to evil. And how is it not a moral instruction to say that slaves obey your earthly masters as you would obey Christ? Because the entire New Testament is about responding good to cruelty. If you have something that is evil, you respond good. How is it not a moral instruction to say the
I don't
same
think that's
thing?
moral instruction. I don't think that that's moral instruction in either case. You're saying that it's moral instruction because it's consistent with some other moral instruction. Here's the thing. If there are people who are enslaved, the only moral instruction that I think would be good to give them is to do everything in their power to escape and help everyone else escape. I don't think it is moral instruction to say, be a good slave.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, but it
Still
also
praying for you,
said
Emmanuel.
if you could free yourself from slavery in 1 Corinthians 7, starting from 21 to 23, you actually ignored that part of the scripture and you just focused on Colossians 3:22.
I didn't ignore
which is
it.
another epistle of Paul.
I didn't ignore it. I referenced the verses that we brought up and discussed. Now, if you want to talk about what it says in 1 Corinthians 7, it does not in any way object to the institution of slavery. It's talking to individuals.
Yeah, and Emmanuel, you actually said that you didn't agree with that when we spoke. I don't know the path that your conversation went with Matt, obviously. Wow. But when we spoke, you said that a person should remain loyal to their master, and that if you were to be enslaved by Muslims because they didn't agree with you and they would see you as a heathen, because that was the justification for enslaving people, was them being heathens, that it would be your responsibility to remain obedient to your Muslim enslaver. So has that changed?
Well, I think, Nikki, to the question that you just said, I don't read, English is not my first language. Amharic is my first language. So I read the Bible. I read the Bible in Amharic. Usually.
Sure.
But I also read New Testament in English, but I prefer Amharic Bible because it's my first language. And the thing I think is, if I found myself, being born into slavery, I wouldn't be bothered of being a slave. But right now, I'm not enslaved by anyone else, so I wouldn't try to enslave myself. That's what I said.
What you said actually was that the reason slavery was okay in the Bible, specifically in the Old Testament, was because the people that were being enslaved were heathens, that they were heathens taken from the lands around the Israelites. And I asked you if that was justified. Okay. Right. Okay, good. So I asked you if that was justified, and you said it was. And I said, well, according to Muslims, because you don't believe the way that they do, you are a heathen. So is it within their right to enslave you? And you said yes.
Yeah,
right?
But right now I'm in the New Testament, so I'm not in the Old Testament. If I find myself enslaved,
it doesn't matter.
You're not.
We Christians believe.
Emmanuel, you're not understanding 1 Corinthians 7. 1 Corinthians 7 specifically. Don't just start at verse 21. Look at that entire passage from verse 17 through 24. What that passage is saying is, for anyone who is called to serve God. Okay, this is who it's talking to. This is for people who have been called to serve God. This is my rule for the churches. Was anyone at the time already circumcised? Then let him not seek to remove the marks of circumcision. Was anyone at the time uncircumcised, let him not seek circumcision. So the first two verses there of 17 and 18 are saying, if you are called to God, don't worry about whether or not you're circumcised. Don't try to change it. And verse 19, it says, for neither circumcision counts for anything nor uncircumcision, but keeping the commandments of God. Then in verse 20, each one should remain in the condition that he was called. Were you a slave when you were called? Shut up and listen.
Don't be bothered by it. Okay.
I don't need you to, oh my God. It says, wow, I'm going to mute you because I'm sitting here trying to clarify what the Bible actually says in a way that might help you, and you interrupting is slowing it down. So here we go. Verse 21, were you a slave when you were called? Don't worry about it. If you can get your freedom, avail yourself of the opportunity. But for he who was called in the Lord as a slave is a freedman of the Lord. Likewise, he who was called when he was a bondservant of Christ. You were bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. Okay? Nothing in this passage, nothing at all in this passage in any way denounces slavery or says that slavery is immoral or says that people shouldn't be slaves. It is a specific passage to people who are convinced that they are called to serve God, that you can be called to serve God whether you're circumcised or not. You can be called to serve God whether you're a slave or not. If you can get yourself free, get yourself free. But if you can't, continue to be a servant of God as a slave. That's what that passage is saying. So I don't know what you think you caught me in, but one of the three of us, me, you, and William, knows what the Bible says and actually can look at it and talk about it honestly. And that's me. Because that passage has nothing in it that is anti-slavery. No, I think
I know that the New Testament is not against slavery because Bible says in Colossians 4, it instructs the masters to treat their slaves well. So we could agree that the Bible never said slavery was wrong.
I agree. But you called in to say that the thing that I objected to, where it says slaves obey your masters, even the cruel ones, you're saying that is moral, and I'm saying it's not moral.
Why is it not moral?
Because telling slaves to obey cruel masters puts them at risk of harm.
Slavery's not moral.
Specifically lines up with the words of Jesus saying,
I don't give a fuck, Emmanuel. Let me I don't know how else to make this clear to you. I don't give a fuck if it lines up with the words of Jesus. I don't give a fuck if it lines up with what you think the words of Jesus are. I don't give a fuck what the words of Jesus are. The words of Jesus are irrelevant to my life, and they should be irrelevant to anybody else's life. Because first of all, you can't even demonstrate that Jesus said any of the words you're pointing to. So if your whole point is there's a passage here that is consistent with something else Jesus said, I don't give a fuck, because that's not what morality is. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I understand. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Thanks.
But you have to understand, what I'm saying is you're focused on one side of the New Testament, and you're actually ignoring other side of the New Testament of the same topic. So you seem kind of biased.
It doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter, Emmanuel. Slavery is not moral, period. And the Bible does not go back and correct.
Why is it not moral?
Do you want to be owned, Emmanuel? And I don't mean in some kinky dominatrix way.
No, I don't want to be dominated either way. So I don't want to be enslaved. I'm not saying I want to be enslaved. But here's the thing.
So if somebody enslaves you against your will, is there a problem with that?
If someone did that, I'll probably obey Ephesians 6:5, and I wouldn't try to free myself.
But the problem here is that you don't want it, and someone is taking away your autonomy and forcing you to be enslaved. It doesn't matter if you comply with it. The point is that person is taking away your bodily autonomy, and that is immoral. So even though you may eventually agree, that doesn't make it moral. That just means you've lost your mind.
Yes, Nikki, but me and you, I could relate. The Europeans actually did that. In the past.
I know they
so
did.
that already happened.
And you're from Africa, which is hella mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
every
so
time.
What I'm saying is
every time somebody, are you saying, Emmanuel, that it is morally correct to own another person as your property?
What I'm saying is there are times that it could be correct.
Really?
When are those
Under
times?
what circumstances is it morally correct to own another person as your property?
For example, if you went to war and you actually captured, the place.
That's not owning someone as property. Prisoners of war are not property. And we have established particular rules for dealing with it. They're not slaves. It's not like you get to keep them. This is biblical bullshit that you're advocating for here, where go slaughter all the Midianites and capture all their women folk and bring them back to you. That's the immoral stuff that's in the book that you're sanctioning. Yeah.
Virgin women folk, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, only the ones who haven't known men.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're pointing to things that are consistent with your grossly immoral book. I'm saying, give me a circumstance where it is morally permissible. Give me a circumstance where it is morally permissible to own another human being as property.
If you treat your bondservants fairly, like Colossians 4:1.
Goodbye, Emmanuel. Goodbye. Take another 2 weeks off to think about the bullshit you just said, because I said, give me a circumstance under which it is morally permissible to own another human being as property. And your response was to say, but if you treat them nice, go fuck yourself, Emmanuel. It's wrong. No matter how nice you treat them, you don't get to own people as property.
Go take another 2 weeks because it is like a 2-week cycle.
No. We told him he had to take 2 weeks off and call back.
Yeah.
After 2 weeks off thinking about stuff.
Yeah, another 2 weeks. This is the third time I've talked to Emmanuel. So
yeah, it's frustrating. I got 2 more calls to get to before the super chats. I want to make sure, especially since they've been holding for a while. But yeah, Jesse is calling in about angry atheists as an atheist himself. So welcome, Jesse. What's up?
Hi, Jesse.
How you doing, Matt? Good to see you again, Nikki. I just wanted to talk about angry atheists. I'm a little angry here, and I'm not. I thought I was kind of over that phase, but it occurred to me the other night that the reason I'm kind of angry is because we are being discriminated against for not believing in something.
Yep.
It's kind of like, I'm very open about myself to most people, but now I have to worry about being thought of as a, quote, bad person by other people, for not believing in something. And that's just kind of, I just feel that that's kind of wrong. It's like when I go up, when I'm meeting people and stuff like that, I feel like I have to kind of keep that to myself. Because it's like, they hear that I'm one of those bad atheists, one of those evil atheists, and it's just like, it's just kind of like that. Just kind of annoys me because I feel like that's part of myself that I kind of have to, hold back on, and I don't like holding back on part of myself to people because I'm a very open person, and I just kind of wanted, it's just like I thought it was like another angle, for being, as most people are angry atheists because they feel like theists are stupid, and I'm far beyond that point because I know better than that. But that's just my take on it. It occurred to me the other night. I'm like, wait a minute, and that's kind of my take on it. I just was curious about what you guys thought.
Well, I agree with you that it's wrong that you are looked at as something inferior because you don't believe in a God.
Yeah.
So childish. Yeah, I agree. It's very foolish. I live in the Southeast, and I've always lived in the Southeast, I've lived in Houston for a year, but that's still the South. And I use a pseudonym for the same purpose. Until I'm able to pretty much dictate my earnings, I will be using a pseudonym because I also hesitate to tell people what I do and tell people that I'm an atheist, especially being a Black woman. That is the quickest way to to get ostracized. Down here in the Southeast.
Hey, everybody! It's Wednesday. It's like 7:00.
Yeah, I can only imagine that. Yeah.
I hear the beginning of the show.
I was
trying to get ahead.
I was trying to fix the caller's audio and accidentally looped the beginning of the show.
It's funny though.
It is funny. But what I can tell you is, so what is actually interesting is while I have been hesitant to tell people I'm an atheist, I actually have been doing it more because I care about what I do and I find purpose in it. And I've actually found more people than not who have been accepting, weirdly enough, and have made some good friends. But I just try to surround myself with people who care about me despite my lack of religious belief. It kind of numbs the pain of rejection a little. But
I just tell people I'm a non-believer now. I don't use the quote A word.
Yeah.
I just say I don't believe.
Just
and I don't do that. And I don't do that for the same reason I don't use I don't do that for the same reason I don't use terms like bright or other things like that, because inevitably somebody's going to say, well, what's that mean? Or what do you mean you're a non-believer or whatever else? And you get around, and eventually what I find is that they'll be like, oh, so you're an atheist? Yes. And so I just cut right to the chase. I'd rather spend my time correcting them about their misunderstanding of who atheists are than having a discussion about what I am and what label fits it. This was, Neil deGrasse Tyson on the one occasion that we met and had a little miniature debate where I got poked in the shoulder by till I thought I almost had a bruise. He's a genuinely sweet man, but when you get him riled up, he will poke you in the shoulder. I still love him, but we had this conversation about why he doesn't use the atheist label, and because I apologized because I'd called him a douche on the show for suggesting that atheists are just as fundamentalist as theists, and he doesn't use the label and all this other stuff. And he said that, he said, you probably think I don't do it because it would, cost me credibility or jobs or anything else. And I was like, no, Neil, I think you don't do it because you value clarity, and there's a lack of clarity there. He's like, yes. And I said Godspeed to somebody once, and the atheist came after me as if I had, just done something sacrilegious. And I don't do that. And, if everybody used the term atheist the way you did, I would have no problem using the term atheist, but they don't. And I said, Neil, if people were using the term astrophysicist incorrectly, would you stop using that term, or would you, with the biggest podium in the world, correct them on it? Because I think you're in a position to correct people on what you mean by atheist and what I mean by atheist. And I think rather than avoiding the term, there could be value with someone with a microphone, a podium as big as yours, in doing that. And that's when he said, okay, you can tell the people on your show I said it was okay to call me a douche. I said, okay.
That's great.
It was fun.
That's great. Actually, I do remember telling one person I was an atheist. And what she said to me, she goes, yeah, so am I. So,
there you go.
Yeah, so.
I appreciate it, Jesse. Try to hang on to the fact that there is such a thing as righteous anger. There is justification in being upset. And sometimes if you're not angry, it's because you're not paying attention. Don't beat yourself up over it too much if you get riled up, because if people are genuinely lobbying that you are somehow you and everybody who doesn't believe the way they believe, or somehow reprobates, deserving of derision, that's worth being upset about. It's the same as people saying, oh, it's not okay to be gay, or you should be ashamed of being trans. There was an atheist, friendly acquaintance of mine who messaged once because he didn't understand pride. Every fucking month, every Pride month, he's like, I don't understand it. How can people be proud of something they didn't have any control over? You can't be proud that you're gay or whatever else. And I'm like, the thing that you're missing is saying, hooray, I'm proud that I accomplished becoming gay. They're reacting to someone saying you should be ashamed that you're gay. And instead you say, I will not be ashamed. In fact, I will demonstrate pride in this, pride in who I am, not because of an accomplishment, but because you think who I am is bad. And I will shove that right down your throat with a smile and pride. And I don't know if he ever truly got it, because some people have such a narrow view of a particular, linguistic usage, that it's like, oh, well, I couldn't be proud of that. I'm proud I got into college. Well, why would you be proud of that? You didn't have any. Yes, I did. I worked hard. Nah, you got the genetic lottery and you had parents that could afford it and other stuff. If you're not going to take credit for other things in your life, if you're going to suggest people can't, not be ashamed of these. Anyway, it was a lot. So.
Yeah. Cool.
But thanks a lot for calling, Jesse. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Not
Thanks,
a problem, Matt. Take care, Nikki. Bye.
Bye.
See y'all later. And the final call for today is from Anonymous. Pronouns are he, him in New York. We're talking a little bit about pantheism and empirical science. I got to ask, Anonymous, are you like the Anonymous? Have you been hacking stuff?
No, I don't do this a lot, but I really been enjoying all the conversations so far tonight. But I just got curious and I thought, let me take a risk. Sounds like fun. And I just appreciate what you're doing here. I just think it's so important to listen to each other and to test our ideas out. And so I may disagree with certain things, but I could be wrong. So I want to, try and improve my understanding. Yeah. I am, because everything we know, we can know better, right? And I think that's important. That
I don't know. I know that 2 + 2 = 4, and I don't know that I can know that any better, but go ahead. What do you got for us?
Right. Well, that's the thing. So when we talk about things like numbers and, that the language that describes objective truths, right? There's an assumption there. And the assumption there is that we share the same reality. Is that not the case?
Yeah, we can't. There's no solution to the problem of hard solipsism. It is an assumption we tend to make that we all share a reality. But that's a pragmatic assumption.
The nuance there. That's a good point, though. It could go either way. But it's not very fruitful solipsism, right? So empirical science goes the direction of, we share the same reality, and because we share the same reality, we can experiment against that reality and derive ever better, ever more precise, ever clearer, ever more accurate understandings. Understanding that, all of the understandings that we construct are imperfect because they use words which represent, these inner pictures that could be more precise, be more accurate. So, the structures of knowledge change, the words, we invent words. And, this is my thing that I'm thinking about lately, that I'm curious about what you think about it, which is that, words represent a bit of intellectual technology that we tend to take for granted, that we didn't always have, And so something like the Bible represents a very complex piece of intellectual technology, if you will, because first of all, it makes the assumption. Oh, no,
I'm trying to figure out what point we're getting to. And when you start referring to the Bible as technology or intellectual technology, now it's like we're throwing out words. What is the point we're trying to get to? Because we're coming up on 2 hours and I still got super chats to do. So what's the point that you wanted to get to?
We didn't always have a time when we shared the same reality in terms of as an intellectual construct. There was a time where that was not widely a shared notion, and so it was a very
wait. Are you suggesting there's a time? Wait, you're suggesting there was a time when we did not realize or think that we shared a reality with the people we interacted with?
Oh, well, yeah, because, first of all, we didn't have words at one point. The gaining of words, must have been, amazing.
No. Look, language is probably one of the most important things that we've ever developed, but that doesn't mean that prior to language, two thinking agents interacting with each other did not have the default assumption that they're sharing the same reality. I reject your assertion that was ever the case.
Okay, so
Is that what you're meaning to say? Do you
but
want to
there's
clarify
evidence.
a little
There's
bit better?
evidence in that. Oh, I'm sorry, Nikki. Pardon.
I just wanted to make sure that that's what you were actually meaning to say. I feel like you're probably trying to
Yeah.
iterate something else that you're not
Well, I
exactly
just
saying
think because,
clearly.
like, if we look at the evidence, like if we look at the archaeology, for example, you know, what you see is you see people worshiping stones. You know, people. You know, you see a lot of
Hey,
there's a lot of intellectual coercion.
Stop. Listen. People worshiping stones. People is plural, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we have multiple people worshiping stones, and you're saying that those people did not share the same reality. Do you understand that your sentence just defeated the point that you're making?
Oh, no. What I mean to say is the notion of impartial discernment. You know what I'm saying? Like something like worshiping an idol has to do with the way that we reason. So like, say we want to reason, right? We're going to reason. We're going to do some science, right? We need to have impartial discernment. There could be no intellectual coercion. We can't rely on our emotions. We can't rely on our authorities, outer or inner. You know, we can't rely on our experiences. We really have
I'm
to
sorry,
follow.
but you said that people did not share the same reality, and then you said people worshipped rocks, which means they are in fact sharing the same reality.
Yeah, so you know these words.
What do you, if
they
you
have
don't mind,
many
if I could just
dimensions.
interject, anonymous, if you don't mind. I understand. I mean, I don't understand it. Let me not lie. Do you mind jumping to the point of what you're trying to say?
Oh well, I just mean to say that the way that we think, like when we talk about critical thinking, you know, thinking without bias, you know, that the decision to think without bias is a value judgment, right? Like you could either think with bias or you could think without bias, right? So it's a choice. What, you know?
Well, actually, there's something called implicit bias. Implicit bias is actually bias that people exercise that they're not aware of. So even in someone's attempt to potentially evaluate something without bias, they may actually be biased.
Right. Well, even implicit bias, for example, you know, you take these things like cognitive behavior therapy or rational emotive behavior therapy. You know, what you do is you're programming your mind depending on the messages that you, the narratives that you play within your mind. You know, you're talking about cognitive training, cognitive decisions, the use of, for example, when you were talking earlier about how it's unethical to use negative identity prejudices. You know, this is something that emerges when we violate the ethic of reciprocity and we place a label on someone, and then we're placing a credibility judgment on, and we're committing epistemic injustice. We're not perceiving them in the same way.
I am done playing dictionary bingo. I don't think you have a point. I don't think you're making coherent points. I'm going to give you one last shot. What is the point that you want to make?
Oh, I just mean to say that critical thinking systems need to have a monistic base. And you see this emerging in different cultures.
Goodbye.
But, you know, there's a common ground there. And
Goodbye. At no point in the history of the Hang Up did I ever ask someone to call in to give a lecture on critical thinking and monastic foundations. I didn't. The thing you should be calling in for is to make a point. Either you agree with us or you disagree with us, and what is the point that you want to make? If you're saying, hey, I believe there's a God and I have some way to demonstrate this, cool. If you're saying you believe in a God and you don't have any way to demonstrate it, that's fine too. And then Nikki will ask you, why do you believe it then if you don't have a way to convince somebody else? And then you can duck and dodge and claim that we're all being hostile to because you mentioned Jesus and we're all terrified of Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Look, I have a freaking Ouija board right here that says I can communicate.
That's right.
I can communicate directly with Jesus Christ. Okay? It says so right on the box, and the box wouldn't lie. I'm not only not afraid of it, I'm going to be filming a video where I sit down at the kitchen table.
I'm watching that.
With my lovely partner, and we ask Jesus some questions to see, you know, is he going to show up? What's he going to do? But
if only you had a producer buddy in town who could make that awesome content.
Yeah, if only that producer buddy could just come on over and do it. But actually, it'll be it'll be next week because
Hell yeah.
let me just quickly run through my schedule. I know we got super chats to get to, and Nikki, if you got to go, I apologize for keeping you so long, but we're just going to read through the supers.
I'm here for whatever.
Awesome, because I already love having you here, and we got to get you back. But I don't want to wear out the welcome here, where you we got Nikki on for 2 hours, and now she never wants to come back on the show.
No,
real quickly,
this was fun.
I have announcements to make and super chats to do. So tomorrow on the Transatlantic Call-In show, it's going to be Arden and Josie. They're definitely two of my favorites, and I can't say much more beyond that. But I always love the show when they're on together. So look forward to tomorrow, Thursday,
quick,
Arden and Josie, and then
can I inject?
Sorry, what?
Just as part of the promo, tomorrow Josie's going to be bringing, I think, the first looks, and it won't be everything of the results of the U.S. trans survey, which is like super exciting. I'm super excited about it. So that's on tomorrow's show.
That's really cool.
Oh crap! Then I just noticed several things. So I have a debate tomorrow night on Modern Day Debates against Stuart Connectley. On Friday, I'm doing Aron stuff. Saturday, I'm at a reptile convention. On Sunday, I'll be back from that convention, but Jimmy and I are doing the Sunday show at 3:00, and that's just going to be, it's awesome. I would love for people to call in and say, yeah, that guy that called in on Wednesday, he was right. We can't prove it to you. And then we can just get into, okay, you can't prove it to me. Why do you believe it? Because I've been asking that question for ages. Tell me what you believe and why, and whether or not you think somebody else should. Next Monday on
quite some time.
Yep. Next Monday on Skeptalk, it's oh shit, did I butcher that just then?
No, you're right.
Skeptalk. It's Shannon Q. And on Tuesday on Hostility, Jimmy's going to be joined by Exmo Lex, who I don't know. So Jimmy, tell us all about what's happening next Tuesday.
Oh, she's awesome. She's another ex-Mormon, and she's really big on TikTok and Instagram, but we've been friends for a long time, and I think everybody's going to like her. So it'll be another ex-Mormon woman like we had last night. We'll be talking a lot about Mormon-specific purity culture and Mormon stuff.
Finally,
go ahead.
Before we dig in on the Super Chats, the most common question we get is, when is all this stuff going to be available as a podcast? And right now we have one producer, and that's Jimmy, who I'm going to have a sit down with Forrest, because when Forrest does Skeptalk and goes for 6 or 7 hours, he's like trying to kill the producer of all the other shows here as well. So we need to kind of scale back just a little bit, but go to patreon.com/calltheline. And if you can, that is the best way to support us right now. Once we're almost halfway to our goal to make Jimmy bald and cosplay as me. We're at, I think, 148 out of 250, and there's only a week or so left in the month to get there. If we get the 250 patrons, Jimmy will shave his head bald, get his goatee set up so that it looks like me, and then cosplay as me on the show, which I'm looking forward to. But more important than just having some fun and making Jimmy bald for a little while, that gets us to the point where there's enough regular income for the show from the Patreon to be able to hire someone to make sure that you guys can get podcast stuff out of it. So
that's awesome.
That's all I got. Let's get to the super chats. Y'all are awesome.
I should have remembered the last one. Next Thursday, we're probably going to do a special event and move TACIS to Saturday, because next Thursday is our 3-year anniversary of the first show Matt and I did on the line, and first show ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Oh.
Anyway, you wanted this. This one looks funny because they did it before the show and it wasn't in the system that I used to put it up, but they did pay for it. So there you go.
So I'm actually going to bail for just a couple of minutes and let Nikki read these, because I have to go take care of something. I will be right back.
I can stay. Yeah, I can help out too. We'll hold any that are specific to you. Cool. Do this.
Hey, Jimmy.
What up? How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you doing?
I am delightful. No, I'm not. It's been a rough couple of days health-wise, so I'm just been sort of muted. But I'm excited. We've got a lot coming up, and I'm excited to be bald. Again,
you have such a glorious head of hair.
I actually look fine bald. I'm like, on the one hand, I should be like, I should pretend to be more scared, so more people are like, I want to make Jimmy do it. Like I said, we need about 100 more patrons to make it happen. It starts at $5 a month. But I already know what I look like bald. Even I already know what I look like bald and with a goatee. That's I know that. Here, I'm gonna text it to you. But no, don't show it to the audience because it needs to be a mystery for them.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to read this while I grab it and text it to you?
Yes. It says Clayton Smith before the show. Patreon deleted my account today. I had to make a new one and resub. Y'all should do more Zoom calls on Patreon. Love the show.
Yeah, I think our goal is probably like 2 a month. We've done one so far with Matt and I want to make sure the other hosts are on board for it and everything. But I think we're probably, the goal is 2 a month and then one in-person event in Austin. Do you love it?
You look like a completely different person.
Let me send it to Matt too, and you can both tell everybody. Don't show it because that gives it away.
I won't show it.
But you can just, on the basis of looking at this, tell everyone how much they need to see what we're offering.
You guys need to definitely sub for sure.
Did you get the DM, Matt?
Completely different person.
I did get it.
Yeah. That's from years ago before YouTube. I tried starting a podcast, so that's why the mic in front of me. You'll notice the familiar cover of a Yeti microphone.
Yes, I got to say, you look less like me and more like somebody who I'd rather not name.
Oh, that's
well, I'll tell you later.
But I will say my goatee is very short in that, and I think it will. And I'm like 50 pounds heavier than that one too. So I don't know how recognizable I'll be next to myself from that photo, but for sure.
I sent you the name.
Oh, I don't even really know who that is. I know
that's all
of
right.
him,
Don't worry
I
about
really
it.
know. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
The medicine that I'm on for my diabetes makes it so that on occasion I just have to pee. Well, I drink an entire Monster like iced tea, and we already went 2 hours, and I was like, I need to pee right now.
I didn't know Monster makes iced tea. I only made that joke because you would have done it if I had said it in reverse.
It's absolutely correct that I absolutely would have, and I appreciate that. 20 pounds from Faye. Nikki, as a woman, I'm cautious around men, but people have said this is sexist, comparing it to being cautious around other races. It doesn't feel the same, but I'm having trouble getting there logically. Can you or Matt help?
This is an interesting question. And as a woman, I would say it's probably warranted to be cautious around men, just as an evolutionary precaution, and not saying that all men are violent or whatnot, but this also may have something to do with your personal experiences with men in the past as well. It definitely be, I mean, I was raised, like my mom was like, carry your keys in your hand when you're walking in your car, always look behind you, don't have your headphones in. So I can understand that. But I mean, I guess it depends on who you are. I don't think it's the same as being racist, but because I think that's kind of more of a evolutionary precaution, but
here's
evolutionary motivated. I don't know.
Yeah, somebody can come in and do the hashtag not all men, and it's true.
Yeah,
there are men who are never going to be a problem. I just today, a friend of mine on Facebook had posted about something going on, and they said they posted a meme where a woman said she carried around little Barbie doll heads in her pocket so that when men came up and asked her for a little head, she could just hand it to them and get them out of there. And my brain fried instantly because I could not imagine any scenario in which a guy walks up to anyone, like at a bar or whatever, and just says, "Hey, how about a little head?" I mean, I'm unable to process it now, even hours after hearing it. But because so many people chimed in to say, "Oh yeah, this is way more common than you thought." I don't even really go to bars that much, and it's happened to me. It's happened to this. I don't think it's remotely sexist to be cautious in general around men. I think one of those trust needing to be earned is the way it should be. And I wouldn't just recommend caution around men. I'd recommend caution of various types around anyone and everyone. It's not even so much a men thing. And yes, men are probably going to be more prevalent as predators because of all the things that Nikki had already mentioned. But we should not safeguard our trust to the point that we become an isolated island. But we also shouldn't toss it around so easily that we find ourselves being used, taken advantage of, abused, mistreated. It just take some. Take it. I think appropriate caution. I think the caution is appropriate, and I don't think it's sexist.
No, it's not. So take care of yourself, Faye.
Whose turn is it? Dead air.
Nikki, you want to read this one? We were just alternating. I don't know if you can see them.
I was Googling, what are your views on castle doctrine? And castle doctrine, as defined by Wikipedia, is legal doctrine regarding the defensive use of force within one's abode. And it says trespassing will be shot on sight. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would need to know in which context somebody was using castle doctrine, but I think you should be able to protect your property. But probably
it's whether or not deadly force. Basically, castle doctrine says if you come trespassing onto my property, I can shoot you in defense of myself and my property. I think that in general, idealistically, I'm in favor of people being able to not only defend themselves, but their property as well. Because if I'm in my house, the threat isn't that you're going to come in and break my TV. The threat is that you're going to come in and hurt me or somebody else around me. I would prefer that it be non-lethal, reasonable force. But, my ex-wife is 5'2", and if that, maybe 5'1", and tiny. And the only thing that's going to protect her if somebody comes into the house like that is a gun. That is the equalizer. And the fact that it would be, without castle doctrine, it would be potentially illegal for her to defend herself, is a problem. Having said all that, I don't think this issue is simple or cut and dried. I think there are big problems with the way castle doctrine is implemented and used. We only need to look at essentially the types of laws that protect people like George Zimmerman,
I was going to say,
which are in the same realm. But yeah, so it's complicated. I'm in favor of self-defense and defense of others and property.
Right.
But I don't think I go all the way to the loose version of castle doctrine. I don't think I could do that. $20 Canadian, which is almost real money, from Nilly Wilson. First time hearing you, Nikki, but your story is powerful, and I can tell you have great things in store. Looking forward to watching more of your work. By the way, if you look down below in the description for the show, you will find not only a link to Nikki's episode of Hostility, but you will find the twitter.com/beatthecult for that. And I think from there you can get to all of Nikki's stuff, including the podcast.
Yes.
I was on the podcast.
I know you were. And so was Arden.
Yeah, she was. That was fun.
Why haven't you been on, Matt? Ooh.
I wasn't asked.
I know. That's why I said it.
I know.
I would love to have you on the podcast.
Whenever you want.
To have you on the podcast. Yeah, it'd be fun.
Whenever you want. I don't need to be everywhere and talk everywhere, but I will happily do it.
I felt like that was, I don't know, like a graduation, maybe.
I said it because I knew Nikki would want to ask, but probably was resisting, and I knew that Matt would say yes.
Like,
this was his whole setup from the onset.
I know almost everybody that you've had on there so far. I didn't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't know the last two, but before that, Damien at Hope and Arden, all the rest of them. Anyway,
Yeah.
Thanks, Nellie Wilson.
Yeah. $20 from Heisenberg. Morning, guys. So, Nikki, having an interest in the occult, I'm curious to know if, when growing up, you had to learn about demons, their names, traits, and methods of banishment, etc. No. My mother, it was Satan. No. We just don't do Satan. They wouldn't even entertain the concept of there being individual demons. My mother just says flat out, Satan and or demons, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ and banish you to the pit of hell or something along those lines.
Those things, I remember talking to my mom about exorcisms, because exorcisms are typically Catholic, Orthodox, things like that. It's not really done the same way in any sort of Protestant sense. And one of the things my mom said is that the Bible says that demons flee at the mere mention of the name of Jesus Christ. So that long, drawn-out, ritualistic fight thing that you see going on when Catholics do it is something else that's not godly, that's not biblical, that isn't any of this, because I saw the demon of alcoholism on my father's shoulder, and I said, Jesus Christ be gone, and it was gone. They can't battle, they can't fight against power, And so I remember it was interesting to learn that take.
I was told the same thing. My mom says that demons cower at the name of Jesus, and by his name and by his stripes we are healed, and other common sayings. Yeah.
$10 from He Was Fuzzy Wuzzy. Was he? Just joined in, and I'm already loving Matt right now. LOL. Caller Matt needs to be honest if he wants to be taken seriously. Yeah. Here's the thing. It's so I get riled up, and after a couple of minutes, I don't hang on to anything for too long. At least nothing from the shows. It feels like I've got Nikki on for the first time as a guest. Great guest, great questions. And we are sitting here, the two of us, trying to get the caller from A to B, and they want to go from A to Geronimo to bicycle to Jesus. And there's only so long that I can sit here and be a charitable listener, especially with 5 other people on hold and thousands of people watching, or 8,000 people watching. But I get it. It's very difficult sometimes.
$10 from Ken Sham. That's funny. He says nothing. Thanks for the money.
$10 from He Was Fuzzy Wuzzy. Correction, I meant Chris. Sorry, Matt. No problem. Make more mistakes so that you send me $10 for every mistake you make. That's great.
We had a caller, Matt, on Sunday's show that it absolutely applied to, so I just figured it was that.
Oh, here we go. More from Ken Sham.
$10 from Ken Sham. Silly question. If someone doesn't believe any God exists today, but believes a God in the past created a bunch of stuff and then stops existing, is a person an atheist? Great work, Nikki and Matt. Thank you, Ken. If someone doesn't believe any God exists today.
So basically what Ken is saying, because I brought up this, I don't know if this is what prompted Ken, but I brought this up before, that even if you believe that there was a creator God, that doesn't mean that creator God still exists. It could have created the entirety of everything, and then that was its creative thing that consumed it, so that it doesn't exist. And so what Ken's asking is, if you were to believe that, would you be an atheist?
No, you'd be a deist.
Yeah, I think that I think that what you'd be doing is you don't currently believe that a God currently exists, but you would have a belief in a God at some point in time, and that you would need to justify.
Because it's still a belief in some type of God.
Yeah, I don't believe that any God exists currently, nor do I believe that any God has ever existed. And so you still believe in one more God than I do, which I would say probably doesn't qualify as an atheist.
Agreed.
It'd be like just because your grandparents are no longer here, or your great grandparents are no longer here, doesn't mean you stop believing that they existed.
Right. That's a good example. Yeah.
Death god of theology is or also called thanatology is the section of stuff they're talking about if they want to look it up.
Cool. I didn't know any of that.
Have been a better god, though. I love Thanos. I think he's awesome. So.
10 euros from Yordam. Would you say that objective morals could be changed, as Christians often claim that morals were different back then in regards to slavery, not that divine objective morals exist in the first place? So I don't have a problem with the notion that there could be objective morals for a particular situation or circumstance, which would make it temporal. But that's not the Christians you're talking about are trying to have it both ways. They want there to be objective, non-situational moral truths that are derived directly from the ontology of God. And they want to say, oh, it was different back then with regards to slavery. Or that this perfect being that is their God could change its mind. Because if you're perfect and you change, then you must have become imperfect. You can't become more perfect. And if you change your mind and you're still perfect, that means that there's multiple perfect positions. And if you change your mind about what's moral, then either you are advocating for situational morality, which is, hey, that's exactly what my position is, or you're saying that morality changed and the character of God changed and that it moved away from perfect. It doesn't make any sense.
Agreed. $20 from He Was Fuzzy Wuzzy. Great discussions, Matt and Nikki. I had to add one more because I didn't want to leave Nikki out. I haven't seen heard you before, but you make a great co-host. Lots of love to the both of you. And Jimmy, you're really good too. Thank you.
No, he's not. Jimmy's great.
Oh.
Jimmy's not really good. Jimmy's great.
Thanks. I was literally just going to say, but thank you.
And Jimmy, maybe not so much today. Jimmy was especially handsome the other day. He looked awake and happy.
I was going to ask, do you mean the day that with the haircut or the day that I showed up with pluckers? Which one was I more handsome on?
The one with haircut. When you showed up with pluckers, you were gorgeous. I mean, anybody who brings me food, you're already my favorite.
They have Dr.
Another
Pepper
10 years
sauce.
from Yordam. Do you have a good example on how thought experiments similar to the infinite regress problem might seem really plausible at first, but have been disproved afterward by science? Wow, that's a rough one to get in there.
This would take me 2 hours in front of a whiteboard to even begin to.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it with something like the infinite regress. But here, I can show you a position that seems plausible at first, but has been disproved afterwards by science. And that is the notion that we lived in a geocentric solar system or geocentric universe with the Earth at the center and the sun going around it. Because at some point in human history, all of the available evidence, every single bit of the available evidence that we possessed, was wholly consistent with the notion that the sun orbited the Earth. And it wasn't until we got access to new information and a new way to look at it that we were then able to scientifically demonstrate that the sun does not orbit the Earth, that in fact the Earth, completely counterintuitive, rotates on its axis, and this is what gives the sun the appearance of going around the Earth. And so I don't know that you can do anything like that with the infinite regress problem. Some problems may not be falsifiable or testable at all, but there's at least one example.
$10 from Sarah Dye. Matt, thank you for being candid about watching The Bachelor. my love, I'm assume I love and I watch it too, mostly for the entertainment and craziness. I spend lots of time face palming. Yeah. I'm gonna let you, Matt,
Thanks,
and my
Sarah.
brother keep that. Yeah.
Yeah, I only started watching since Arden and I got together, and
I was gonna say
mostly I sit there and mock them.
Yeah.
I have
well, my brother
tried.
loves it. I can't do it.
I must have had
I
9
never tried.
girlfriends in the past who really was like, okay, but try watching it with me, like that many. And I can't do it. I can't.
Oh, I have fun. I have fun. But granted, I'm happy to watch all kinds of things just to turn my brain off or while I put them on in the background while I'm doing something else.
I feel like you should try, if the old seasons are on on Amazon, doing the thing where you do Prime videos on Twitch and give your commentary. I think a lot of people who don't like it would enjoy watching you watch and giving commentary.
Really?
That sounds fun.
I think so.
It's an interesting idea. I should do that.
I'll only need 20%. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like it. It sounds like money. That sounds awesome.
€10 again from Jordan. It's me again. What would be the best way to challenge somebody on his religion if his reason to believe in it is his personal experience of which he admits he cannot demonstrate to others? So you've got all the admission at that point that you could get because someone is saying, I believe because of personal experience which cannot and should not impact your beliefs. This is all that David Hume could have asked for, which is that revelation isn't necessarily first person, and to everybody else, it's hearsay. And so the only things to push back on then is to say, if your personal experience isn't sufficient for me or anybody else to believe, what about it makes it sufficient for you? And be prepared, because it may be that their personal experience is sufficient for them. Just like I was talking about before, I may not be able to prove what Arden said to me right before we went live, but I experienced it and I have good reason to believe that she said it and I'm not delusional. So the mere fact that I have access to information that you don't have access to does not mean that I'm irrational for believing it. And so what you'd have to get to at that point, which I think is the best answer to your question that I have, is to say, if somebody were to tell you this, that their personal experience justified their belief, would you look at them as a rational actor? And if this same sort of thing happened to you in other areas that conflicted with your current belief, how would you resolve that? You've had a personal experience of A and a personal experience that implies not A. How do you then resolve that without resorting to external impact? There's a reason that science relies on things like peer review so that we're not just relying on one person's experience. There's no such thing as your truth. There's the truth and then your perception of that truth. Nikki, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, I just ask people if someone from another religion said the same thing, would you buy it? And when they say no, I just say, okay, well, there you go.
That's the shorter, better answer than what I was doing.
Yes, but you're also right. $10 from Sarah Dye. Nikki, it has been so great to have another amazing brain on the scene. Thank you. I have loved getting to see and hear from you on so many shows. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you more. Well, thank you, Sarah, and thanks for watching.
$10 from Dante Verona. You might find this amusing or maybe frustrating. I was once told this: you're closed-minded, you don't believe in astrology. When it's that silly, even though I don't normally like these sorts of things, they're sort of clever the first time you hear them, but I don't want to be so cliche that I would say this all the time. But at that point, if somebody said you're closed-minded, you don't believe in astrology, I would say I'm not so open-minded that my brain has fallen out.
Yeah. I've heard similar things from women that I dated because they tend to love astrology, and I'm just like, no, that's not scientific. Well, you're too close-minded. Well, you're not scientifically minded, so we're not going to work.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to do a video.
of this happening to you? The best time someone told you were closed-minded because of something they presented?
Who, me or Matt?
Both. I love these stories. This is one of my favorite topics.
Oh, I won't have a memory that's all this stuff's been said to me 1,000 times over, and I don't pay any attention.
My old roommate's mother, I was driving her somewhere with the roommate in the back. I don't remember where we were going, but she started going on about this guy, Bruce Lipton, I think was his name, and his theories about basically you could meditate genes into changing their expression in your body, like fundamentally change your DNA and become basically a different human through meditation and practices like that. And I was like debunking literal, this is back when I was closer to having taken all the bio classes too. I was like debunking thing after thing after thing she was saying about DNA, and she just finally basically gave up and went, "You're just super close-minded," right after telling me I should be only drinking water, which has been dripped off of silver. So that's my favorite one.
What? That's wild. That is very wild. I wish I could do that. I would immediately, well, let me not say that, but I would probably turn into like Dolph Lundgren and just take over the world as like a really tall, beautiful white man.
That's I might also, we might be twins. If you figure it out, we'll run around as Dolph Lundgren twins.
I was going to say, let's run around as Dolph Lundgren together and do shit. $10 from Sheridan Bernasconi. I was born the same day and year as Paul Stanley from Kiss. I'm a poor grandma and he's a rich rocker, so astrology is silly. And maybe you can change your DNA to be Paul Stanley.
There you go.
Sheridan, there you go.
$10 from James Call. Matt is the Captain Stubbing of my atheist love boat. Welcome aboard, Nikki.
Thank you, James.
Did anybody catch my Facts of Life reference earlier?
I did.
Am I just okay? I was like, I know I'm old in some of those references, but now that somebody's making Love Boat references,
there you go. $10 from Gabagool. Great stuff as usual, Matt. Nikki is an excellent guest. You have a new fan. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, y'all go. Awesome. So I think right now Nikki's channel is criminally undersubscribed to. So everybody go subscribe, and then that will encourage Nikki to make sure that she gets out more interviews and more podcasts as well. See,
that's true. I am definitely wanting to do that more often, and thinking of starting a Patreon very soon. So, yep, go subscribe.
Hey. Thanks, Gabagool.
This next one comes in at $5, but they sent another $5 to beat the threshold. Explaining that for the audience who might go, "Oh, $5? The threshold's $10 on this show." So send in your $10 chats or more.
Sure. Eddie Dean says, "Can you please explain Jesus being both the Son of God and God at the same time? Never really understood it, even when I was a Christian." Nobody does, and nobody can explain it.
No. I was raised Trinitarian, so, well, like, my parents believed in the Trinity, and I still don't understand it. To me, it's just nonsense.
Nobody does. And when you talk to the pastors who think they've got a clever one, I've heard them say, like, "Well, you know, I'm a father, and I'm a son, and I'm a husband." Yes, but that's just three labels for one person. You don't get to simultaneously be a father in Detroit and a husband in Pittsburgh and a son in Texas. That just doesn't work.
Right.
Well, you know, there's so many. I did a whole video on "Is 3 really a magic number?" because this pastor gave a sermon about how, look, your finger is divided into 3 segments, and then your hand is divided into 3 segments with this and this and this, and then your arm is this and this and this, and then your body is legs and torso and head, and everything's in 3s. In a stool, you need 3 legs for a stool to stand up. And I was like, yeah, but 4 is better. 5 is even better than that. But yeah, it's so funny. €10 from Rebecca Borg. Rebecca Borg. "I'm a hard-headed Capricorn, so I will assume I'm probably likely to win the Zodiac competition, or at least get a constellation prize or something."
Bravo.
I love that Nikki and I were both ready to clap simultaneously. Your pun has pleased us.
Only 2 more.
MX. Whoa, 250 bones from Rostaman. Hey, Jimmy, any chance of getting a physicist and or cosmologist version of Forrest on retainer anytime soon? Also, I signed up for your YouTube paid subscription. Will that not contribute to the mini Matt odds?
Correct. It will
Jimmy?
not contribute because YouTube takes like 30%. We really only put the memberships there because some people want to be able to skip slow mode. Otherwise, we really prefer people be patrons, to be honest. As far as physicist and or cosmologist, yeah, I mean, retainer's funny, but of course I would bring the right person on. We actually have a more intensive vetting process than people might think. And by the way, just so you know, this is pesos, Nikki, so it's about $13. You were very excited by the 250, but these are pesos.
It's still incredibly great, super gracious and welcome.
Yes.
Yes. It said it had a dollar sign, and I was like, there you go. Okay.
And $20 Canadian from Kathleen Moncrief. Do you think Ouija Jesus takes requests like "find my keys," or is he too busy trying to microwave a burrito so hot that even he can't eat it? Well done.
With the image of Christ burned on the bottom.
I plan to hide my keys. I'll do that. I will hide my keys in a place where I know where they are, but Arden does not. And we will ask Jesus to tell Arden where I hid my keys.
It's funny. And when she finds them, because she knows you so well, she can just say Jesus told her.
Man, do you remember that show? Probably like 2 years ago, someone called in and said, God, like he knows God exists because God will give him answers when he prays. And we asked always, and he was like, yes. And so he said, okay, let's test it. And we did the coin flip thing. And he immediately got it wrong and was like, sorry, I was wrong. Okay, bye. Like he immediately was like, you win. I was wrong. My bad. Do you remember that?
I kind of remember that. It sounds familiar.
I gotta go back and find it, but I'm not gonna. I just would like to see it again. Anyway, sorry. There's
I
two
don't
more
know.
now.
$9.99 from Brunpoo KC. Thanks so much for lodging the Facts of Life song in my head. You're welcome. Take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. Facts of life. There's a time you got to go and show you're growing. Now you know about the facts of life. Anyway.
$10 from Rob Irwin. I'm assuming that's a reference to the chef. I don't know. Hi, Nikki, Matt, Jimmy, and YouTube. Here's $10 to split amongst yourselves. Enjoy your evenings all. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
I like that they included YouTube in the list. Hi, Nikki, Matt, Jimmy, and YouTube, because we do have to include YouTube in our splits. It's the best.
Yeah.
So quickly, as a reminder, first of all, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks so much for all the super chats. Thank you to Jimmy for producing, but a huge thank you to Nikki. I'm so glad you got to come on this week. Please come back and do it again. Tomorrow,
thanks for having me.
Tune in for Arden and Josie on Transatlantic Call-In Show. And then Sunday, Jimmy and I will be doing the Sunday show. Monday, Shannon Q is doing Skeptalk. And Tuesday, Jimmy's going to have Exmo Lex coming on to talk about, I think, being an ex-Mormon. And go to patreon.com/call the line. We're more than halfway to making Jimmy bald. And I've seen the preview picture. You guys want to see this.
You definitely want to see this.
It's a worth it. On that note, Nikki, tell everybody where they can find you, what you've got going on, and how long it's going to be before you come back.
Yes. So actually, simultaneously, and I actually kind of regret scheduling it now because I really want to see Matt go up against Stuart Connectedy again. That's one of the debates that I've watched recently. I am actually having a debate tomorrow on the Crucible against a gentleman named Chase, who is quite interesting. So that should be fun. After, I'm definitely going to be watching Matt's debate. I will be releasing another podcast on Monday. And then as February starts, I will be having All Black Atheists on my podcast for Black History Month. So definitely keep an eye on that. And Twitter, you can find me at Beat the Cult. YouTube, you can find me at Beat the Cult. I will be launching a Patreon within the next month or so, and also a store. So keep an eye out on that. And I would love to come on as soon as, as soon as Jimmy would have me, that would be great. And Matt, I'd definitely love to hopefully get you on the podcast in March if you're available.
March is my birth month. I'm an Aries, so I'll definitely do it.
Wait, what date?
I'm a
My birthday is March
Pisces,
31st.
13th.
Oh, mine's March 5th.
I'm 31, and it's one day before April Fool's Day, which is the atheist
That's
New Year.
awesome.
All three of us then,
So-
right? Are March?
Yeah,
Yep.
we're all March birthdays. It's
Matt's
wild.
We should do it.
thing.
We should do a Sunday show in March with all three of us.
Hell yeah.
Yes, like a some type of astrology type thing. That'd be funny.
I'll
Let's do it.
coordinate
yeah.
with Aron so we can go late. Ask Matt what year he was born. It's actually the coolest thing about his birthday.
What year were you born, Matt?
69.
Yeah. Nice.
That is hilarious.
The best year.
Truly.
Anyway, once again, you guys have managed to make my Wednesday to help make my week. I got a lot of stuff coming up. I can't wait for next. Is next week Heathen Queen?
Heathen Queen. Yep.
Yes, because I didn't do a show last week, and my apologies to everybody, but we had a lot going on and family in town. I'd love to talk about it sometime. In the meantime, please go out, be nice, don't take any shit, don't take any wooden nickels, don't buy into any pseudoscience, and come back next week and talk about what your week was like. Thanks.